Well, hello. Hello, lovelies. Welcome to our monthly mentorship and Q&A call. So much to hit. I want to say how psyched I am to see you guys here. I know for a lot of people, this is a challenging day to get here. So many of you will be watching this after the fact, which is just fine because you're here in spirit with us. I see. So drop your name if you are here, though, so I can see you in the chat roll. I see Sarah's. That's my Sarah. Hello. And there's Penny. How you doing? I think Forrest came earlier, but now you're coming back, I hope. So do say hello so I can say hello to you. You can see I'm not in my regular setup because it is Thanksgiving here in the US tomorrow, and I already have a house full of people. So, and Vic happens to be in the city drawing people at Rikers Island, so I'm in his studio. So I tried to be like, hey, this is a half-finished painting. Isn't that better than just seeing all the crap that's behind here? I bet it is. Hello, welcome. I wonder how many of you are cooking for Thanksgiving if you're in the US, because I am. So that's what I'm doing today, is prepping and chopping and doing all of the many things that have got to be done. I'm really excited, though, that as many of you have made it to the call. So welcome, welcome, welcome. This was such a juicy topic this month. It got me thinking so much. I did a bunch of spontaneous posts and videos because I was really into it. And what you guys were sharing was really profoundly impacting. Like, I was in it with trust and thinking about the difference between trust and intuition and all the ways that, I mean, a lot of our focus in the monthly mindful focus and in the reflection was about self-trust, because really, like everything else, this is where it all begins. And when we don't trust ourselves, it really does impact. And someone made a great point. I'm going to get to all your questions and all the things that you've said. I want to do a little bit of housekeeping first about, you guys were really engaged this month. And it was so nice to see you supporting each other, but also sharing so beautifully. And we actually added different areas within the portal and within the Facebook group for you to share and be witnessed. And I can see that you're taking advantage of it. And I absolutely love it because it is the safe place. And the more we're invested in doing sort of our work here, it's this place to practice, to see if other people have the experience that you're having. It really does have a ripple effect within the Hive itself, but within your world, So someone said, I saw your lovely gratitude meditation. Really appreciate your effort and dig your smooth, resonating tone. Why, thanks, Elisa. It's so funny. I almost was going to redo the meditation that I did live. And then I was like, you know what? People don't expect perfection. So I appreciate you saying that, though, Elisa. It really means something to me because literally my inner perfectionist can get in there, and be like, it's not good enough. You should make it more perfect. Then I was like, no, I don't think I need to. And I didn't. So I'm glad that you liked it. Okay, so let's move into, hold on. Yeah, so we had our affirmation. I trust myself to love, value, and choose me. And again, my focus from a therapeutic point of view, psychologically, was to really, for us to be uncovering basically how we got this way and why our relationship to trust is the way it is. We also added this new way of reflecting on the trust blueprint. I was encouraging you to do something different. So I want to know, did you talk to a friend? Did you kind of dance it out? Did you journal it out? I would love to hear if you are using a new way of reflecting. I would be interested in hearing it. So please feel free to share it. What else? Yeah, so the courageous actions were amazing and so awesome. And we have actually lots of questions. I wanted to teach a little bit before we get into the questions, sort of expand on what got opened up for me, really, and so much of it. Wow, I'm sitting on this chair that's so super high, you guys, and I'm so short. I'm trying to cross my legs. I'm not sure if my leg is going to stay awake for me to do that, but I'm trying. What I was saying is that what you inspired in me was a lot of self-reflection, your situations, your questions, your struggles with this really had me like diving deep into my own blueprint. Yes, but I just got really into seeing the difference between like how we are naturally, right? Like how some people are naturally trusting, and we have life experiences, of course, that influences that. But then some people are also kind of naturally doubting, the way we can be naturally positive or naturally pessimistic in a way, or optimistic and pessimistic. So I want you to kind of right now and watching this after the fact, really think about what is your stance in life. Are you kind of a natural truster or a natural doubter? And I don't know that, I firmly believe that those, whatever you are, those things are nature and nurture, because I believe that we can be, of course, we can be too trusting, and this is how we get hurt. And certainly in life, I feel like I was born very trusting, and then I became more discerning. And I won't say less trusting. I'll just say I learned through therapy, through pain, through being screwed over by people, um, that being indiscriminately trusting is just as dysfunctional as being indiscriminately untrusting or doubting. Does that make sense to you? You know what I'm saying? So I'm curious, do you feel like you're a natural truster, or are you a natural doubter? If you had to say, and you could just drop a comment if you're up for it in the chat roll so I can see it. Yep, someone said doubter. Okay. Team TC, you can jump in here too. Feel free. Definitely a natural truster, says AB. Okay. Yeah. Natural doubter as well. It's interesting. So far, we're about half and half. And I'm curious, when you see this after the fact, what your thing is. We've got another doubter, says Suze. Yeah. But let's get a natural truster, says another one. Okay, so let's get into the nuances of what this is about, though. Like, why is this? Now, I believe nature. I do honestly believe that we're born with a particular natural stance, sort of like just by nature. Kids can be very difficult, even infants, or super easy, and that's just nature. That's just like how you're born. But let's think about what are the differences between these things. If you're naturally trusting, it's kind of having the belief that things will work out. It is like being optimistic, right? It's having some kind of faith that you'll get where it is that you want to go in life. It's like being hopeful if you're trusting. And again, I definitely am not thumbs up with blind trust at all, right? And I'm not, why we don't talk about manifesting in those terms is because there's some magical thinking that can go along with that. I believe that if we hold that vibration, that it's possible if we can visualize the things that we want happening and we're willing to do the work to make them happen, right? So it's a combination of things for me. But doubting is sort of needing everything to be proven to you, like as if like the universe or God or whatever it is that you believe in, that there's something is an explanation or proof is owed to you about things, or proof that you're good, proof that you're worthy of what it is that you want. And so part of it is that we have to create that experience, I believe, for ourselves, even if you're naturally doubting, which is okay. And you probably have good reasons to be. I'm still thinking about the phrase, not less trusting, but more discerning. Yes, that's what I'm talking about, Trace, right? It's because I think that a lot of times we can, things get, is the word conflated, I want to say, where things get pushed together that don't really belong together. I believe that is the word, where we can be trusting and hopeful and also look for evidence and also use the data of experiences that we've had in the past with this particular person to be more discerning in that relationship. Does someone deserve our trust, right? So I like the macro view. And Tracy said, I'll extend trust, but will retract quickly too. Again, though, that's all this sort of wanting to prove, like almost waiting for the other shoe to drop, with like trusting until you prove otherwise to a degree, which, I believe, innocent until proven guilty, as we say in the legal system in this country. I believe that I think that that's a a fair assumption. But I also think that when we know our own backgrounds and our own history, and hopefully from doing the trust blueprint, you got more of an idea of why you sort of how you came to being the way that you are in life. Like we have life experiences. Um, and I'm going to answer your questions, but I feel like so many of you had such poignant things to say. So I want to talk about some of those comments first, and then I will get to the questions because we have plenty of time. Um, and I thought it was really these things were such teaching moments. I literally could have taken about 40 things that were said and created a whole talk on just those because they're so profound and they're so insightful. So Aurora said, trust is a challenging one. I'm finding it easier to trust myself these days. Things are much clearer now. Trusting myself has definitely made it easier to trust the people in my life that are worthy of that trust. Of course, we can't trust everyone, but if we know the right people to trust, then we're ahead of the game. And what I wanted to say to this is that it's such an important point that when we cure ourselves of the disease to please, or our awareness of the fear of rejection, the fear of like retribution, because a lot of us had like punitive parents, that we realize that we're almost afraid that if we don't trust people, if we hold them to task, if we make people keep their word, there's a part of the child within us that's afraid to do that. Like, will something bad happen to me? Will I be punished if I go that route? But the way Aurora said it, it was so simple that and really she was just sharing her experience, that as she's built more trust within herself, prioritized herself more, because this is what is required to build more trust, that she trusts herself to know who to trust. That sounds like convoluted, but do you know what I mean? It sounds like long way around the barn to say the same thing, you know. Penny says, as I learned to trust myself more, I'm also becoming more trusting of the universe because I feel I can always come back to trusting myself and of course, and course correct. If that makes sense, it does. Here's the thing about trust in the universe. If we're looking at it from more of an existential point of view, I would say that when we have a more trusting relationship with ourselves, we're less dependent on magical thinking, being saved by someone else. Part of building faith that the universe, that there is some kind of intelligence and that the universe is sort of conspiring in our favor. This is what I believe, honestly, in my heart. That if I'm willing to do the work, if I continue doing the work, that I'm so much more clear about what I want. I'm so much more clear about what will and won't work for me. That I'm less dependent on, I have faith in the universe. It's easier for me to have faith that things will work out because I'm also so much more equipped to guide things to work out. So it's less like what magical, and it's more, it makes sense. Having a better experience with yourself will happen as you build a better relationship with yourself. That also means you'll be more successful in your relationship. It also means that it's easier to have trust in things because you're less desperate because you have actual skills. Does that make sense? Penny says, yes. Okay, good. That was such a great comment. Thank you. Okay. Another thing, Wendy had a great point that I wanted to make. Trust is an issue since childhood where I learned to not trust my narcissistic mother. Essentially, she would lie, manipulate, and often not follow through on things that were agreed upon, like picking me up from school, right? This has clouded my view of trustworthiness in people initially. I thought I would give everyone a chance to prove their trustworthiness, and over the years have been conditioned that people in general are not trustworthy. A person's word is not necessarily their bond. So I have a jaundiced eye, which I thought was so clever, for placing my trust in anyone. I make sure now that I watch their behavior to see if it aligns with their words. And Wendy, that is such a good point. Now, you came to it from a painful circumstance in your life, and I have so much compassion for that circumstance, but the wisdom that you just shared there is that shit is deep. Instead of just being like, I'm going to blindly trust people, you go, what I call in my own life, as I say, I'm cautiously optimistic with people, but I will not ignore the red flags or the signs in your behavior if what you're showing me is that you can't show up. I don't even need to know your story, right? Because your story could be you can't show up for yourself. That's okay, but that's your side of the street. If you make a commitment to me and you don't keep your word, or you don't call when you say, or you cancel at the very last minute, if it's once, I will definitely give a pass. Maybe you're sick. That shit happens. But I also know, because I also know lots of trustworthy people, and I am super fucking duper trustworthy as a human being. And I know what lengths I can and will go to in my own life to do what I say I'm going to do with people. So when people will have a lame excuse, let's say for me, or they'll say, things got messed up, or they'll say, I used to have this with clients. Sometimes they'd be like, they would tell me something like, I'm sorry, I have to cancel. I'm calling for my friend's phone because I lost my phone. Now, one person, you might lose your phone once in a lifetime. I did, actually. I left it on a train one time when I fell asleep. It happens. If the same person loses their phone, I don't know, 5 times in the matter of 2 years, either you really have ADD or something that is really impacting your ability to be present, or this is just a convenient excuse. It's the same people who have food poisoning. Do you ever notice that people who are not telling the truth, they'll say they've had food poisoning? Like, I don't know. I know people who will say they have food poisoning. I had one client who said she had food poisoning, and I'm not lying, 7 times in 1 year. And I was like, dude, and of course we eventually got to it, but I was like, you can just not be in therapy. Like, you're paying me for sessions you're not engaging in. Not necessary at all. Like, for me, it gives me a free hour, but I think it's a waste of your money. Anyway, you know what I mean? With the trustworthiness, that Wendy's point was, if evidence starts presenting itself, and we have to give ourselves permission to observe others in a dating situation, in a new friendship situation, in a family situation, it's okay. And in fact, it is correct to be like, oh, I'm going to observe what this person is doing. And that's going to tell me who they are. Now, if I love you and I'm invested in you, I'll have a conversation with you. Hey, this isn't working for me. Or, hey, I've noticed this, so I'd like to make a simple request, whatever it is, right? So again, keeping in mind that trust can also be built, because a lot of times people don't show up because they can't show up for themselves. And if you say to them, you matter to me though, like your presence, I notice it when you're not there. Your presence is important to me. That can shift because we grow in relationships. So my whole thing isn't, let's just walk away from that person, All right, next one that I wanted to talk about was, Cassidy made a great point. She was basically saying she's not untrusting sort of with the bigger things in life. And she's been married for many, many years, and she doesn't feel afraid that her spouse is cheating on her or nothing like that. But I'm generally untrusting of others on most small things. I think that's why I don't share much about myself or who I am, because I don't trust that others will not use that information to hurt me. She also had a very unhealthy mom, she had shared, which is something my mother consistently did to me, and something she was afraid of others doing to her. So weird that if she feared others would do it to her, why would she turn around and do it to her daughter? Hey, sigh. Oh, I feel you, Cassidy. You know I do. Part of why she and I parted ways a few years ago. And I wanted to say what a great point this is, because I wanted to bring up, this brought me to seeing this deep connection between overfunctioning, overgiving, overdoing, being high functioningly codependent. and lack of trust. So can you see the connection? Right? So if you can drop me a comment of something. Can you see what I'm saying in this? That and for me in my 20s, it used to be that I would do all the things because then I would never have to find out if the other people wouldn't do them. Or I would do all the things because I was controlling and I wanted them done a particular way. And I didn't want to have to correct the person, even though of course I grew up to realize that, I'm not God or the, ruler of the free world or anything, that it doesn't all have to be done my way or the right way, let's say. So that was something that really I think is impactful and maybe the most important part of this entire monthly focus for me is what she mentioned. Sharing something with someone and then having them use it as a lever against you or throw it up in your face or use it to humiliate you or to control you later. To me, that can't be. Like in my life, I don't have one person in my life who has ever done that and would actually still be in my life. I can't. And I know that I'm extreme and that's me because I'm very sensitive and I just can't and I also don't do it in my relationships. So, and I'm not saying that I'm perfect and never say, well, that's why I thought we should do it that way. Like, a sort of a covert, I told you so. I'm not saying that. I'm really talking about what Cassidy was talking about, which is something that is deep and that is painful. That if you share something with the people in your life or with someone in your life, a friend, and they actually use it against you, wow, that is super not cool. Just not cool. And I want you to think about for yourself, do you do that in your relationships? And it's not to judge you or to judge anyone. I want you to think about it because this is something, even if it's learned behavior, and hey, it might be, right? Because we've all had these experiences. This is why we're talking about it. If it is learned behavior, realizing how damaging that behavior is and how you so don't want to do it. Even if someone does it in your life, you draw a hard boundary, even if they've done it before. You know what I mean? But we don't care because you just want to be like, no, on that. Okay, so I'm moving on. And I don't know, you guys, I feel like there's something with my chat roll. I went to refresh it and now I don't see anything. So, and then I went back into it. So maybe Tracy, you can help me figure that out. But in the meantime, I'm actually get to the cues now because I don't want to not get to them because, this is so I could just keep on talking about it. So the questions are, Kim made a great point. And I said that I would talk about this on the call. And she just made this distinction like, hey, trust influences my ability to love someone deeply and wholly. So I may love my adult stepson who's 40 years old, but I know not to trust him as far as I could throw him due to his inconsistent decision-making and actions for the past 25 years. He has a good heart, but he's too sensitive and tender for this world. Whereas I have two girlfriends who I trust and love wholly and deeply. I would say my husband and I do have trust issues in certain areas because our values are different, i.e. he has a chronic illness, MS, which he chooses to handle reactively, where once the damage is done, one cannot get it back. Whereas I'm all about being proactive, whether it's seeking alternative medicine or other ways to help him live as stress-free and fully as possible. Self-trust is huge. Without it, it makes loving myself impossible because I feel like I am one way on the exterior and another way within my interior. When I'm in alignment with myself, life is always better, or I'm better at dealing with it. And this brought me to something that really was like, wow, I went down a whole rabbit hole personally. That what I wrote in the group is that there's a distinction. You guys, yeah, okay. So people asked to refresh their browser and if they needed to re-sign into the chat. I don't know if you need to. But you guys, if you do, if I bumped you out, maybe I did by refreshing, I'm sorry. So, but I'm still here, by the way. I wanted to talk about, um, for me, trust is the highest value in a relationship. So it's like literally the most important thing to me. And I think it's important to make a distinction between, like, you can be in a loving relationship with someone who you trust. They don't use things against you. They wouldn't hurt you. They're not being disloyal to you in some way. But being aware of their weakness, right? And I can say this truthfully in my own experience in my own relationship, where I always feel like I want to protect Vic because I feel like he's too trusting in the world. I mean, when we met, he had people in his life who I were like, oh no, these people are not good. These people are users. I do not like them. Nope. I'm not cozying up to them. These people owe him money. They just things that I was like, the fuck out. This guy does not deserve that. And trust me, within 6 months, house was cleaned. Um, and not in a, it sounds like I'm a total control freak. It wasn't in that way. I didn't force him. I just was like, hey, do you realize this is happening? And then when we were together, other friends of it had asked us to borrow money. And I was like, absolutely no fucking way. I was like, babe, do you get that that is like a problem and that you're setting up the relationship to fail? We can't do it, you know? Hold on. I'm going into a new chat link. Woohoo. Here we go. Let's get rid of that one. All right. We'll see if that works. I hope it does. Anyhow, the point is, for me, Vic prioritizing other people over himself sometimes is not a deal breaker. I mean, he prioritizes me over himself all the time. And I do the same, though. I make sure like we're equal. But so I really appreciated what actually Kim shared, because there's such a distinction between how does that person's, if they're in your life, let's say it's your partner, how does their lack of trust with themselves impact your relationship? So with Vic and I, friends asking to borrow money, I can't say what he would have done if I wasn't there. I can probably, in an educated way, guess that he would have said yes to 5 grand. And in some ways, whether people think it's functional or not, we make up for each other in relationships a lot of times. So even in my relationship with our relationship with the kids, like I'm the heavy sometimes, and sometimes it just has to be that way. I just say to him, babe, we're not doing that. It doesn't work. I can't, or whatever, or it's not healthy. And then I'm able to have that conversation like Dad and I talked about it, la la. But I don't judge Vic for that. We just figure it out between us. If he wouldn't let me be a part of the solution, though, if he was like, no, I have to loan the money, then we would have major problems. Then that would be his inability to say no, or the disease to please. That would then be spilling into our life, our financial life, our relationship, and that would be a problem. But the fact is, we problem solve together and then handle it. So I don't know. I hope that I clearly made that distinction from Karen's. Oh no, not Karen. Who was it? Kim's question. All right, moving into the next cue. Yeah, that was Kim's. Is Karen had something to say. I struggle so much with trusting my gut. The icky feeling when something is off. Can you explain signs we should look for that keep us keep trust? Wait. Basically, she's trying to see the difference between how can she trust that something is off, especially when it's someone close in her life that she loves. So what I wrote down is that fear of rejection can feel a lot like that dread feeling, like when your intuition is telling you is something wrong, which then means you're like, crap, now I have to have this conversation. I'm not sure I know how to have. I'm going to try to have, I don't know, you know? So can you see that our own fear of rejection, fear of confrontation, fear of people not liking us, having the disease to please, how that can so get in there and screw up our gut instinct when our gut says something is wrong and something has to change. Does that make sense? So what I always say, I say it here, I say it in the courses, I say it everywhere, is that I want you to give yourself permission to know the truth, and also give yourself permission to not do anything about it at this moment in time. because the fear, especially if we're like perfectionists or we just want to get it over with, so to speak, sort of, is that, well, if I know it, then I have to do something about it. And I'm saying, no, it's very valuable to know it. You have to know what is true for you. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who she's married, she's got kids, she's got two kids, like, in a rough situation. And I knew they were really struggling this summer. And I saw her 2 weeks ago and I was like, my gut was telling me, like, I'm like, oh, I think she's already done. She's like, well, now he's willing to get into therapy. And he said he would 6 months ago, but he didn't. But now he wants to. And I was like, oh, did you already turn the corner? And she's like, I think I might have. I was like, okay. But you also had a lot of changes in your life right now. So maybe now is not the time. You don't have to do anything. That's a possibility. You know how you feel. But she just started a new job. There was all these other new things happening in her life. And I was like, hey, because she was asking me my opinion. I was not giving it to her unsolicited, just so you know. And I was like, hey, you don't have to do anything. But I'm here to talk about it if you really do feel like you've already turned the corner and that you think potentially there's no way back. And that's okay, And then I will, as your friend, I'll help you figure out, if you need help brainstorming what to do, I'll help you. But it's just like speaking the truth, because for a lot of us, it's there. And not speaking it doesn't make it not there, So the answering the question of how can you tell, the better your relationship is with yourself, the better, the more you've cured yourself of the disease to please, the more you can identify what your actual feelings are. And if you can give yourself permission that if the truth is something you wish you didn't have to know, but you do, that you give yourself space and some like lead time to figure out what you want to do. Because, I've actually done a blog on this about how confusion a lot of times can just be like a code word for I really know, but I'm too scared to know. I really know, but I don't want to know. It's easier for me to say I'm confused than it is for me to say, I think my marriage is over, because I just feel so ill-equipped to deal with that truth. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's, I think I answered the question, but it was such a good question, Karen. So thank you. Cheryl had a great thing to say. How do we keep our promises and words to ourselves while making sure we have the flexibility to any changes at the same time? Are they conflicted? Which I thought was a really good question, because this came up also with like, how do I let myself change my mind about things? Someone asked me that in one of the courses I just finished, but it was like, she'd committed to going on a vacation with people, said she was doing it. Yes, going to do it. And then she was going to cancel the vacation. I said, listen, you have a right to change your mind, but understand if it means you're breaking a word to people, they have a right to be disappointed and sad or pissed about it. So of course you have a right to change your mind. That is your right. But I think that we want to be really clear that if you're course correcting about something, that you're not sort of covertly doing it out of fear. So how do we keep promises to ourselves? Well, you first have to always, what do? We always look at the history. Where are the places, to actually answer Cheryl's question, where are the places that you don't keep your word to yourself? That's most productive to know, is like, oh, I'm able to keep my word about myself or to myself when it comes to work, right? I said I was going to stop working at 6 o'clock and I do that, even though it's my own business. Let's just say, I'll give you an example. But when it comes to my girlfriend or my boyfriend, that's where I always seem to just give in. I don't keep my word to myself, that I'm out of a conversation with them, or if they ask me to do something, I don't keep my word to myself that I said I'm going to do yoga or go to the gym, because I cancel and I go with them. So we can be good at keeping our word to ourselves in one area and then bad in another area. So in the places where we're failing the most, it's so helpful to do some kind of an inventory where you go, Oh, look, it's always in romantic relationships where I seem to abandon myself. Okay. So if I asked myself how that was familiar to me, right? We were always looking for the past because it has a tendency to repeat. Is it something that we learned from our family of origin? Right? Was your mother very self sacrificing in a romantic relationship? And now you almost feel like that is now what you're doing because that's what you learned about love. So, those are the types of things that we want to look for in identifying. But, Cheryl, if you can be mindful in the moment and get really clear by doing some kind of an inventory of where are the ways in your life and what circumstances would you like to keep your word to yourself more? Would you like to prioritize yourself more? Then you can really drill down into what's happening in those situations. Because that's like vague, because the truth is most of us have some relationships or circumstances that are way more challenging for us to keep our word to ourselves than others. And that all has to do with family of origin and things that we've experienced in the past and things modeled behavior. So there you go. All right. So Cheryl was also sharing a situation with where her boyfriend was unfaithful, and they talked about it. And he's got some kind of a sexual addiction, and that she can't stop replaying, like imagining him with this other person. And how can I do it? Because it's how can she control those thoughts? And I basically said, listen, as time goes by, because I know you guys are talking about it from what you've shared, I know that you're coming to some kind of a solution. You've created space so that he has to deal with his own problems rather than you fixing it for him, so to speak. So time really will be helpful, but also when you get into a loop like that, the rubber band trick that we've talked about before, and if you don't remember it, then someone on Team TC will drop we'll drop it. Either we'll put a post about it or we'll drop it somewhere so that you can see it. Because it's a cognitive behavioral technique that when you have the thought, when you start to envision, and I know, Cheryl, because I know you from other courses and stuff, that you're snapping it. So I know you're aware of it. And then you replace it with, I'm okay now. I'm not thinking about that now. I'm thinking about something else. I'm going to focus on something that I'm doing in this moment. I'm going to focus on getting grounded right here, right now, because these are all ways that you can stop being sucked into that. It's ruminating. I mean, sometimes we just call it like a circular thought pattern. That can happen, but it really can happen when when something was very painful and you feel traumatized by the experience. So I hope that was helpful. And Cheryl had another really insightful thing. I will nutshell it, but I really thought it was great, and I wanted to share it for those of you who, if you're not in the Facebook group, if you're only in the portal or whatever and you haven't seen it. Basically, I shared about what happened in my relationship in the monthly focus post and also my journal in the Courageous Act portion on Facebook. Sharing my values in the action post concerns me if I'm unconsciously growing my secondary gain of being seen as a good and understanding girl while building self-trust. I'm not sure if it's actually the inner me being mean to myself or it's real that I'm catching myself growing my good girl image. Any suggestions? And I basically said that the insight that she had was really profound. You're seeing nuances of your own motivation that really tells me that you're evolving. As you stated, you can be both a good person and be aware that in the past you might have used your desire to be seen as good to gain the approval or love of others at the expense of yourself. And I will guess that there is also a cultural element to the deep fear of being seen as full of yourself, because that was also part of what she'd written in the long post. Although most women in most countries and cultures would not want to be seen as full of themselves, but some cultures disapprove of that perception or will punish that perception more than others. Just a point to ponder, but all of it is so good. So I just wanted to share that with the rest of you who hadn't seen it. Ula has a question. Dear Terry, I've been ghosted in May by a guy I met online, and we met twice. I feel like we had a good connection, and it was really hard for me to get over how it ended, and that he just disappeared, ignored my messages. Now I rematched with him again, and we started talking. And I wanted to ask if you think there's any chance he can actually be worth a second chance. When I asked him why, he said it wasn't about me, but about him. He was lacking self-confidence and thought I wasn't sure about him. So just didn't want to waste my time, is what he was saying. But he never really apologized. We had just this one conversation today. So I'd like to know your thoughts about whether giving a ghoster the second chance could ever be a good idea. Thanks. And I basically said, listen, I don't know, right? What I can say from the information we have is that it's a perfect opportunity for you to speak your boundaries into existence, for you to say, listen, Ben, Bob, George, whatever the guy's name is, I want to talk a little bit more about what happened, because for me, I have no problem with whatever it is that you would tell me. My problem is with you just not returning my calls. And your ability to do that is definitely concerning. So as much as there's a part of me that thinks that we could be a good match, the only way that we can go forward, even just talking about this, is if we have an agreement that if you're not feeling it or I'm not feeling it, we will use words to share that with the other person out of respect, out of kindness, out of decency, because that's really what I would need. Because here's the thing. If you do need that from him, right? You need to not be worried about it, because the fact that he did do it tells me he's capable of doing that. So saying it may not make him not do it, but at least getting an agreement. Hey, you might be creating space for him to rise up, right? From where he is right now. And actually, it's like speaking to his higher self instead of colluding with his lower self. You know what I mean? So I hope that was helpful. Ananda had a question. This may not be related to trust issues, but I'm a natural trusting person, and my child is growing up with me as a single mom. The narcissistic father lives on another continent, and we're in the middle of a custody case that he initiated. My experience with the father is ravaging, but I would never vent this feeling to my 9-year-old child. When and how should I actually tell the child the whole story, or what part of the story regarding my real suffering and his custody and his father's threat and the health and career loss I incurred? Should he know, and how to convey? And I said, this is a really rough situation. And I have to say, I think the answer is no. Not 9, not even 15. I think that as a parent, there's nothing valuable about him ever knowing the true story. When the other parent has a psychological disorder, and I believe from what you've shared, your ex probably does, certainly has narcissistic personality disorder, although that is readily acceptable in this day and age, especially in the US, as just somebody being ambitious or whatever. I think that the damage that can be done to a child is far greater than the benefit, because children love their parents regardless. Even though he's been raised by you, I know that he also has a relationship, or at least a while ago, he had a relationship with the father, at least some. I don't know. Listen, I'm not a child psychologist, and I think there are better people who can answer this question better. But I have had many people in therapy who, even though what you're talking about is real, the damage done to the child when they are put in a situation to choose, or to one parent, even if what you're saying is the truth, and even if you want to do it so that the child is protected, I don't know. Like, I just feel like the damage that can be done to the kid, because it's like we love both of our parents, or we want to, regardless of who they are, even when they fail us endlessly, even when they're terrible. The child is like ever hopeful that perhaps they'll change and perhaps it can be different. So I don't know. I think you're an amazing mother that you have invented to this child so far. So keep up the good work. And I'm sorry I don't have more to add to it, because I really do feel like it's important that children be protected from the nastiness that can go on in between adults, even if you're doing your very best, and I know you are, to protect that child, Okay. And hold on, I'm going to go into Slack. So you guys, if any of you can see anything in the comments, I'm sorry, you guys, we've been having a problem with the commenting thing. I say this every week, and every week we use the same thing, and every week something happens. So what I want to know, if there's anything there, and I know the crowd is small because it's before the holiday, but I don't want to be missing anything. So if anyone from Team TC can see what anyone's saying, and I should know, drop it into the doc, please. All right, moving on. Cynthia made a good point, and I just wanted to share it. So because she was asking if other people could relate, that I'm so much trusting and being trusted, but not so much with myself. I let myself down constantly. Don't see through my diet. Like she's not following through for herself. So we did kind of handle it. Works herself into exhaustion, all of those things. But what I want to say is that what you can do is break down each one of those situations and try to understand the same thing that I said, like do some kind of an inventory. I want you to try to understand, because perhaps there is a repetition that you'll see, like all of in our life, when we're trying to have insight, we have to look for patterns of behavior, patterns of situation. If you end up in the same situation sort of over and over, then we're like, okay, I'm the common denominator in my life. So there's probably something else for me that's old, or in the basement, as I like to say, that could use my attention. So what I wanted to say to Cynthia is that it's actually more about understanding what are the situations, how is it familiar to you, and raising your awareness, right? Your present moment consciousness, your awareness in the moment of what's happening when you're canceling your Pilates class for what someone else had to say to you or what they wanted you to do, because that is so important. And that is how you can start keeping your word to yourself, and just pick one area. So let's just say we can't, do it across the boards. I say it's easier if you can stay focused. Like if you work yourself to death, use that area to decide that you're not going to do that anymore. Have that be your focus. How can I create a relationship to work where I can trust myself? Right? When you overwork, you can't really trust yourself, because you're not able to keep your head on straight to like what is in your best interest in that moment. Because if you decide you're going to work another 5 hours when really you've already worked 12, the answer is you shouldn't work another 5 hours. But if you do, then you can't be trusted. You're like a little kid who's like, I don't want to go to sleep. You know what I mean? So have that be. Look for similar situations, familiarity, family of origin stuff. Who does it remind you of? With someone else, a workaholic. That would be really helpful for you to know. So I wanted to share that. Susie said something that I loved, and I wanted to bring it into a situation. Hold on. Oh yeah, this was in the portal. This was like major, and I loved it. I responded there, but I thought maybe a lot of you wouldn't see it, so I wanted to share it. She said, thanks a million for this topic on trust. It's the number one roadblock on my path in life because I was abandoned and neglected as a child. This week, my husband of almost 40 years, who I trust with my life, was diagnosed with an extremely rare disease. He's been awaiting pathology results for 3 weeks and did not tell me the results right away, like I asked. I was away on vacation and found out in a text from a family member. I immediately called him to get the story and asked him why he did not call me, and his response was, it didn't come up. Sheesh. I was really pissed at him and very scared of the diagnosis. Anyway, when he picked me up at the airport a few days later, we had a conversation about trust in the car. I'm happy to say, because of this month's topic, I was able to express my thoughts, feelings, and boundaries about trust to give him right away, and it felt great. So I wanted to just be like, yay, that's amazing. And what a breakthrough it is to do it in the moment. When we love someone, we can either justify their behavior or personalize their behavior. But when that other person is in the situation of getting a diagnosis, it's so scary. We're not acting as our sort of normal best selves, let's just say. You were away, and he just said it didn't come up. No, it just sounds like he's not a good communicator. There's a specific reason he didn't reach to you. And I would guess it's because you were away and he didn't want to ruin your trip. Maybe I'm being too generous. I don't think so. You said you have a 40-year marriage where you trust him with your life. So whether he has the words to say that or not, and it's still so incredibly important for you to say, listen, no, you don't get to protect me, quote unquote, from this, if that indeed is what he was doing, which is my guess. We are a team. Here are my boundaries, or whatever it is that you said that made you feel like it was a total win. It's just so amazing to decide that regardless of what happens, that you'll go through this as a team. And we do have to have agreements in our relationships about stuff like this, because when you're married for 40 years and married for 22 years, like I am, that person's health, their lack of health, their lack of well-being, if they are psychologically unwell, if they are physically allow themselves to either they're not well because they're sick or because they don't keep themselves in good shape, let's say, those things have to be talked about because they impact the other person. I mean, I had an agreement with Vic before we got married. I was like, I literally broke up with a boyfriend because he wasn't physically fit. You don't need to be an Iron Man, but you can't let yourself get unwell because you're already 10 years older than me. So that is an agreement that you can literally never break. And he was like, okay, fine. And if if Vic starts slacking, I'll say, babe. And I don't remind him of the agreement because I feel like that's too, but I do say, hey, you didn't go to the gym at all this week. Please make time. I'll do, because he'll be like doing the dish. He'll be doing shit he doesn't need to be doing, right? I'm like, hi, I'm capable. I'll do those things. You have 90 minutes right now. This just happened 2 days ago. And he's like, all right, I'll go. And he went and swam. And so we support each other in it, but it's also something that if you don't have it, because a lot of times people would be like, you can't control me. You're not the boss of me. And if you've been in a relationship for many years and that's true because you don't have some kind of agreement, you can try to talk to the person. Listen, when you love someone, you don't want them to be sick. And if someone has a diagnosis, it's not about blaming whether they were healthy or not. Of course not. Once you're to the point of someone being diagnosed with something, no. Now it's all about all hands on deck. What can we do as a team, as a group, as a family to get the most care, get the best care for you? Another thing. So I hope that was helpful. And I love that share. So thank you so much. And right on you. Way to go. Another trust and courageous action that I wanted to share was from Kim. So she attended a Take the Stage conference and had the experience of speaking in front of a group and did a very mediocre job, she says. The courageous act was putting myself out there knowing it was not going to be my best with little time to prepare. However, I took the opportunity to put myself out there to be seen in a stressful situation. I got feedback, acquired information, and know what I need to do if this truly is something I want to become skilled at doing. And she kind of like poo-pooed it, like, I don't know if it's so courageous, but I did it. And then I was like, dude, it is so courageous. I mean, listen, public speaking is like one of the top, I don't know what they say, most common, biggest fears that people have. And I think it's amazing. And the real thing that's amazing, because so many of us are recovering perfectionists, is to allow yourself to go up there and do it how you do it. And be like, you know what? There is some learning curve in this that is worth doing it. And it is courageous. Trusting yourself that you're not that fragile and that the learning was worth it. And I think that is very ballsy. So right on you. I think that might have been the last one I was going to share. Let me go through and make sure I hit it all. You know, my team hates when I go out of order because then they're like, did she hit it? Did she not? Yes. Okay. And the last thing I want to say about trust, and I want to really talk a little bit about how much all of you embraced the topic and how much conversation there really was about it and so much sharing on it that I really want to encourage you, if you've been lurking, any of you, whether it's in the portal or whether it's in the Facebook group, I really want to encourage you to continue to be courageous and to share. Share what you're doing, share how you're feeling. Let this actually be your home group. Like, let this actually be, like any of you are in recovery, like in the rooms, we're like, yeah, that's my home group. Let this be your non-recovery home group. And this is really, what are we doing here together? Dealing with life, getting better at creating lives and relationships to other people and to ourselves that really make us lit up, that make us happy. And so I'll always be mining my information from you because you're it for me, basically. And we'll continue down this journey. But I know that the people who are sharing, you get so much more out of the experience by really, speaking of trust, trusting that this is a sacred space. I've created this sacred container. Me and Team TC are here for all of you. And to build the hive that we want to have, I want you to also experience that you can trust each other and what it looks like to have women responding with kindness and clarity to where you are in life with no judgment. And how much of the time people are like, oh my gosh, me too, me too, me too. Because really, we're just all seekers doing the best that we can in life. We just want to be good daughters, partners, mothers, workers, friends, lovers, right? Isn't this really what we all want? But we also want, and I don't mean good like a good girl, I mean to be doing it well, authentically, for ourselves, to actually figure out how to be seen and heard and known in this lifetime. And that's what we're doing. And this is the perfect place to actually try it out. Be seen. You're safe, So, so much gratitude for you. We have Thursday is Thanksgiving here in the US, as I said before. And I did the gratitude post because I was thinking about how meaningful it is for me to be building this community, because the ripple effect of what happens here, that goes out into your life. Every aha moment that you share, every skill that you learn, every pivot that you do, a profound pivot in your own life, that ripple goes out and out and out, from your children to your friends to their children. People will be sharing, like I was talking to my friend and she was in the same situation and I shared with her what we were doing. And now she and her daughter are getting along better. Like, that's what happens when we generously share of ourselves, when we get to that point in being courageous to just tell the truth. And why I wanted to end it on that note of Kim actually just going up there and feeling unprepared, but just fucking doing it anyway. I want to inspire all of you to build the community in this hive by being present, because I'm here and we're here. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm saying happy Thanksgiving to all of you who are in the US, and happy last week of November for all of you who are not. I will see you in the portal. I will see you in the Facebook group, and I can't wait to dive into next month's topic with you. It's amazing. So to be continued, because we have two things for next month, because we have something that we're going to be doing together in replacement of New Year's resolutions, because they suck. We're not doing those, but we're doing a ritual, and we do it in the hive as well. So, but that's not our monthly mindful focus. So we're going to be doing two things next month just as a bonus, because why don't we go into 2020 like, bring it, here we are. All right, you guys, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy your turkey or your tofurkey, whatever it is you're eating, and I will see you in all the places that I see.